Good morning to all. My name is Rosilena Lindo, Deputy National Energy Secretary of Panama, and I have the pleasure today to continue with the second part of the opening ceremony of the fifth ministerial meeting in the company of one of the most extraordinary climate heroes of our planet, who I'm sure needs no introduction. Our special guest received his undergraduate degree from Yale University and his law degree from Boston College Law School. He is the best-selling author of A Call to Service, This Moment on Earth, and his 2018 memoir, Every Day is Extra. For 28 years, he served as U.S. Senator representing Massachusetts, and for 4 years was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He is former Secretary of State under the Barack Obama administration. In January 2021, last year, he was appointed as the first special presidential envoy for climate for the United States of America and the first ever principal to sit on the National Security Council entirely dedicated to climate change. President Biden announced he will have a seat at every table around the world as he combats the climate crisis to meet the existential threat that we face. And today, the virtual seat of the fifth ECPA ministerial meeting is occupied by Mr. John Kerry. Mr. Kerry, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for such a generous, wonderful introduction, Rosilena. It's my privilege to be with ECPA. Thank you for inviting me, and I really look forward to the conversation. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Us too. And as you know, energy contains transformational opportunities. The introduction of clean energy solutions is a game changer to improve healthcare, to have access to better education, to create new jobs, and also it offers sustainable economic value to reduce poverty. And a just and inclusive energy transition based on renewable and energy efficiency is urgently needed, not just to accelerate development, but also to cut emissions that are rapidly warming our planet. And the Panamanian youth is very aware and active, promoting actions for a better climate. And they have a question for you. This first question comes from the former students of the Sustainable Energy Leadership Program, the SDG 7 Academy. And they want to know, what is the state of climate actions after COP26? And what do you consider the greatest contribution that the United States could provide to climate change mitigation and adaptation actions towards developing countries?
Well, thank you. Thanks so much, Rosalina. I really appreciate, again, the opportunity to be with you, and thank you for the question passed on from a lot of very capable students who are watching this carefully, I know. I want to thank President Cortizo. Thank you very much for your leadership and for what the government of Panama is doing, and the Organization of American States for hosting this event. So what is the state post Glasgow? The state is that we made enormous progress in Glasgow. The 1.5 degree limit as a target to limit the warming of the planet was accepted by the entire conference. And 65% of global economic effort, global economic enterprise, is on a track to hold the 1.5 degrees, at least to keep it alive as a goal. The problem is there are a number of countries not yet able to, or haven't made the choices of what they need to do to also be part of that 1.5 degree limit. And so some of them are big countries. I mean, China has 30% of all the emissions in the world. They have development challenges. Obviously, we understand that. But we need to be moving off of coal all around the world. We need to be moving towards renewables. We need to accelerate that transformation in a very significant way. And I think that Glasgow is the beginning of that transformation. I'm very happy to report that China joined with the United States in a joint effort to cooperate in order to try to accelerate the process of transition. And we look forward to working with the Chinese in a cooperative way to help make this happen. We think there are many things that both of us can do in order to facilitate the transition, which, as you mentioned in your question to me, Rosilena, must take place without leaving people behind. We need to do this in a way that recognizes that sometimes the least powerful people, the poorest people in the world, are too many times victimized by those processes. We're determined to try to get this right, which means helping people to transition, helping people to move to these new and some high-paying jobs. There will be millions of jobs created in this transformation. So I don't think it's something any of us need to be scared of. We need to embrace the transformation. And the Renewable Energy Initiative for Latin America and the Caribbean, the RELAC initiative, is a very important part of that. And I think we have 15 countries already signed on. It's a collective effort, and we strongly encourage others to join in the context of this conference or otherwise. I'm excited about the prospect of the future. If I simply stopped and measured where we are today, you can get pretty miserable, because the fact is we're not moving fast enough yet. We're not reducing emissions enough. And there's too much coal-fired power around the world still. We've got to transition faster. But, and the but is, I think people are increasingly seized of this issue. There are literally trillions of dollars beginning to move to invest in new technologies that can help us achieve this. So I think people should fundamentally believe in the human spirit, in the human capacity. When we know there's a crisis, we also know how to respond to it. And what we need to do is come together and make sure that happens. And I think Glasgow set the stage for that in a very significant way, but we have to move faster than we are today. If we don't do enough between 2020 and 2030, we deprive ourselves of the ability to hold 1.5 degrees. And we deprive ourselves of the ability to reach net zero by 2050. So everybody has a stake all around the world in moving faster, in being more serious. Our biggest enemy in this effort is the status quo, and we have to push back against it and look at the opportunities and make the most of them.
Definitely, to win climate fight, effort from several key players is needed. And to move the green transition forward, core changes must be made. And having said that, I would like to know, like moving towards renewable energy means modifying the business structure of fossil energy related companies. What do you see as the role of the private sector in the energy transition?
The private sector, I know some people don't necessarily like what I'm about to say, and some people don't believe what I'm about to say, but I'm convinced of it. I've been doing this for 30 plus years, 28 in the Senate, 4 as Secretary of State. I helped negotiate the Paris Agreement and Glasgow. And so I have some feel for what is involved in this challenge. And I'm telling you that I don't believe we can get where we need to go without the private sector being deeply involved and at the table all the way. No government in the world has enough money to be able to put into the investing necessary to bring green hydrogen online or to push the curve of discovery on battery storage or to do carbon capture and utilize and you know, to actually make that come to scale at an affordable rate. We need investment. Now, in the course of Glasgow, we worked with major financial institutions around the world. I can tell you that I worked very directly with 9 US, the largest banks in America, the 6 largest banks in America, and they committed that over the next 10 years, it's their choice. They think it's important, and they're going to invest some $5 trillion in this transition. I just read 2 days ago that in the last year, our venture capital totals around the world are somewhere around $1 trillion now for climate investment. It was about 500 billion a few years ago. So you can see it's doubled and is moving much faster. That's how we're going to win this. We have to figure out new ways to, just as the car industry, look at what Tesla is doing. It's the most valuable car company in the world, the most valuable company in the world. And yet it makes only one thing, electric cars. That tells you something. The fact is that there's a new future in front of us, a new energy future, which is going to give us clean power, clean transportation. It's going to help us avoid the problem of lakes and streams being polluted. It's going to make life healthier. It's going to make it cleaner. It's going to make it safer. And I'm excited about that prospect, but we can't get there without the private sector at the table, investing, exploring new technologies, doing the research and development, putting it into deployment, doing the full score up to scale development. That's going to be, frankly, a lot of energy that gets generated from the marketplace itself. And we need to look on the private sector as capable partners in this effort. Now, one warning, not everybody is going to come easily to that table. There are people with big vested interests who do not want to move as fast as we need to move. And so we're all going to have to keep pushing. And governments can do the critical work of creating the framework which provides incentives or creates the regulatory structure. The other, the means by which you actually create demand, which then the private sector will follow.
Certainly, the private sector helps the creation of wealth and are fundamental to harmonize new and additional climate investment and fostering innovative business models. But to take the road to the new energy economy requires a lot of innovation. We need to innovate the capacity building process. We need finance innovation, social innovation. And what is also needed are new coalitions to increase climate momentum. Last November, more than 20 countries in the Americas joined the Global Methane Pledge at the COP26. Why reducing methane emissions such an important goal?
Well, that's a great question. As we say in the business, that's a softball. You know, I can hit that one. And thank you. Look, methane, a lot of people don't know what methane is, where it comes from. Methane is a product of fossil fuel. It's gas. And it's a gas, and gas itself, you know, when you say we're gonna have a gas plant, or you know, we're gonna increase gas supply for your stoves and home, et cetera. About 87+% of that gas is methane. And methane is about 80 times during its early stages more damaging, more destructive than CO2. It doesn't last as long as CO2, but it is extremely damaging. And during a 8 to 10 year period where you're struggling to reduce emissions, you can't afford to have a 15-year or 20-year period during which you've got 80% more destructive gas being released into the atmosphere. Now, where it not only comes from the gas itself, so it leaks during transport, it leaks from the mines, from the wells, it leaks being you know, stored. And then, of course, when it's burned, it becomes a CO2 problem. So the challenge for us is to capture the methane, capture the gases. The initiative that we created in Glasgow is asking all countries to join in an effort to reduce methane emissions globally by 30% by 2030. It's no one country has to do the 30%. Globally, we want to add up to 30% reduction in methane. You know what that does? When we achieve that, it is the equivalent of taking every automobile in the world, every truck in the world, every airplane in the world, every ship in the world, and you're bringing them all to zero emissions in that period of time. It's a gigantic gain if we reduce methane. So China has stepped up and said they're going to submit a national action plan this year, which will be ambitious and begin to shut those wells and begin to cap the wells and the mines and begin to stop the leaks. And the truth is that getting a handle on methane, except for the problem of permafrost melting, where it leaks out of the earth and up through the ocean even, but getting a handle on it in our businesses and in our communities is something that we are able to do. And it's about a savings of 0.2 degrees Celsius in terms of the warming. So that's why it's important. It's an extremely valuable goal. It's the first time, one of the successes of Glasgow, the first time that methane has really been on the table as part of the discussion.
So things are moving forward. That's great news. Also, having in mind that the opportunity to enhance change coming from youth movement represent more than a wake-up call. Youth movement are amplifying voices demanding fast and concrete actions with tangible results. The Panamanian NGO Youth and Climate Change want to ask you, what actions is United States carrying out as developed country regarding the insertion of young people and other traditionally underrepresented groups into climate action?
Well, thank you so much for that. Look, young people are the ones who are driving this movement. It's young people who kind of woke everybody up and shook the political establishment and said, you better get your act together. And so young people historically, frankly, have usually been the folks who tend to move us forward. I remember when I was a young person, we were involved in the environment movement, the women's movement, the peace movement, the effort to end the war in Vietnam. I mean, the civil rights movement, the Voting Rights Act. Things changed because young people went out in the streets and marched. Young people became involved in the campaigns, in the politics, and really made a difference. Panama, to your credit, I think you had the youngest negotiating team at the COP. And it's a credit to bringing your youth to the table the way you did, which is something that we also worked at during the course of the walk up to Glasgow. I remember meeting personally with a whole convention of young people who came to Milan when we had the pre-COP meeting, and we met with over 400 young leaders, listened to them genuinely, carefully, and a lot of what they had to say got incorporated into the work that we were doing in the COP itself. We are supporting a lot of new opportunities in the United States for youth and public servants to make this the focus of their careers, which is what we want. The US Department of Energy recently announced the Clean Energy Corps, which is going to bring a diverse group of young people together in order to, people who are committed to the mission of supercharging the clean energy movement. So we're going to continue into the next COP. I think that if we're successful at this effort, in the end, it's going to be because young people become part of it. They hold people accountable. All they're asking is for adults to behave like adults and make decisions based on facts, on science. And that's exactly what President Biden is going to remain committed to doing.
What a powerful message. To close our conversation, I would like you to share with us a final key message for all the local, national, regional stakeholders from the south to the north of the American continent and the Caribbean to inspire them in delivering concrete actions to accelerate a just and inclusive energy transition.
Well, Nelson Mandela had a saying that it always seems impossible until it is done. And there are a lot of examples of that in public life. Cesar Chavez, who I knew and appreciated enormously, kept reminding us, si se puede. And President Obama did the same thing. Yes, we can. Was sort of the motto of his campaign. I believe that. I don't think those are words. And I hope young folks will recognize the power that you actually have. Enormous power of standing on a street corner and helping to gather people together and talking to them about a problem, getting your colleagues in high school or college or wherever stage you're at in life, organized. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that. And go to political events. Demand that people in public life don't just, rely on words, but they translate those words into actions. And I really do believe, I know the difference it's made because that's where I came from in political life as an activist, long before I ever ran for office. And I urge you to do both. Be the activist, be an office holder. We are blessed in the Americas to be mostly democracies. And we need to guarantee that we're going to exercise the rights of democracy. Democracy is not an automatic pilot operation. You have to keep fighting for it. You have to keep working for it. You have to make it work for you. That's just the rule. So I urge you, please, we can't do this without a whole bunch of young folks coming to the table and working with us. And obviously, you need us too, and we got to come together and unite around common sense, around facts, around science. My colleague in the United States Senate, the late senator from New York, Patrick Moynihan, had a famous saying. He said, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And you have to help us push back against the disinformation, the lies, the distortions, the people who are providing alternative facts. There's no such thing. There is a truth. 2 and 2 is 4. That's a reality. And the fact is that the climate crisis is a crisis of physics and mathematics. We know exactly what's happening. We know exactly what's going to happen, and we know exactly how to solve it. So please come aboard, help us do it.
Mr. Kerry, you have provided the audience inspiration to plan and deliver a positive future, a sustainable one, where energy transition will assure a better quality of life for all. The Governor of Panama, thank you for bringing climate enthusiasm to the table, for highlighting and adding action by action that we are building the fabric of our nations. We are becoming sustainable fabric for a climate balanced world. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for your great stewardship of this conversation. It's been a pleasure.